If we took away all the water and just measured the amount of dirt being dumped there, how much would it be per year? It's about 300 million cubic yards. A cubic yard, okay? 300 million of them every single year? I got a question for you. How long would it take for the Mississippi River to fill up that big hole in the ground we call the Gulf of Mexico? That hole is really deep, folks. 8, 9, 10,000 feet deep, okay? It would fill up this hole in 11 million years. So that means the continental United States could not have been above sea level and have been raining on this planet for more than 11 million years. And they claim it's been for hundreds of millions of years. They claim it's been raining on this planet for 3.5 billion years. It's scientifically impossible, folks. And when you actually go measure the sediments, how much actually is there, we know that that river has been flowing for less than 30,000 years. Even if you ignore a worldwide flood, which will put most of those out there in a real short period of time, if you ignore a worldwide flood, the maximum age is 30,000 years for the Mississippi River Delta. Even as the river changes its path, it all dumps the Gulf of Mexico. All this whole area, less than 30,000 years of sediments. What about the Nile? Every major river in the world has less than 30,000 years of deposits where they dump into the ocean. That's evidence number one to remember. All these major rivers, okay? Now, on this planet, when it rains down on the planet, would you stick a cup out sometime and catch some rainwater? Sure. Sometimes we call that something like distilled water. Generally what you find out right here is the sun beats down the ocean, water evaporates, forms clouds. Sometimes the clouds blow over the land. They rain down or snow down. The snow melts or the rain comes down, forms river channels, and flows back into the ocean, right? It goes through this circle, a water cycle, right? And this water, when it comes up out of the ocean, doesn't have any minerals, does it? It leaves all the salt and minerals behind. That means when it rains down the planet, it has to start dissolving the planet. If it didn't dissolve the planet, you couldn't get trees and plants to grow, could you? Okay, so how long would it take to dissolve the whole planet down to sea level? Well, very simple. We just do some simple math. There's 383 billion tons of dirt, rock, above sea level. We're moving about 27 billion tons of dirt into the oceans from the rivers, above ground and underground, every single year. What's one number divided by the other? 14 million years. So maximum age there is 14 million years. No problem. And yet they claim to find fossils dating hundreds of times older than that? No way, folks. Let's get to how water affects erosion. You ever been to the Grand Canyon? A few of you remember that again? Okay, let's go back to the Grand Canyon. Look at those flat layers. I mean, just flat. I'm not talking about up here where water and weather has turned around and eroded that section. I'm talking about right here. They claim that some of these layers right here were left exposed for millions of years until other layers came in and filled on top of them millions of years later. You can't leave things exposed for millions of years without getting river channels in them. Look how flat these are. Flat, 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 flat. I mean, incredibly flat layers for 275 miles. How's that possible? You see, any flat land left exposed to water and rain is going to have the river channels. See those right there? Little gaps? Let's zoom in a little bit better. If you had some farmland that was originally flat, after a few hundred years, you're going to start having little creek beds, right? That's what weathering does. And yet we don't find it where they claim that these layers were exposed for millions of years. See those flat layers right there? They claim that one of these layers was exposed to weather for 10 million years. Another one of those layers was exposed to weather for 15 million years. Not possible, folks. Those pancake layers prove once again their whole theory is nothing but Hollywood. It's not science. Now, this is the second evidence. Remember I said there's two evidences from this lesson. River deposits, and this is called polystrate fossils. Mount St. Helens blew out 1/4 cubic mile from the north end of this volcano. It went towards this lake that you see right here. When it went past the lake and up the next hill, it literally stripped off the trees, knocked them all down, clipped them right off at their bases. Some of the water went up that mountain with it. Okay? Shockwave pushed it up there. Then the water brought these broken off tree trunks back into the lake. And you had 1.5 square miles of floating log mats sitting on top of Spirit Lake. So what would happen if the whole world was destroyed by a worldwide flood? You'd strip all the vegetation off the planet, wouldn't you? Genesis 7:11 says all the volcanoes of the great deep broke open. you'd had shock waves sending all kinds of tidal waves over the land at that time. It would strip the vegetation. You had huge floating log mats. Well, eventually those floating log mats would rub against each other and the bark material would fall down to the bottom. Or they eventually get waterlogged and they'd fall down to the bottom. That's what a PhD in geology at Penn State did his PhD dissertation on. His name was Steve Austin. He's right here. He's one of those two guys. I don't remember which one. He said, let's go test my theory that the coal formations we see today were formed and caused by Noah's flood. So he says, well, go take a look at these logs right here. We'll go to the bottom of the lake and see if some of the sedimentary layers from these logs are starting to be deposited on the bottom of the lake. Now you see this little thing I keep circling over there? Why is that log sticking up in the water vertically? Well, you know about tree trunks. They're sitting there horizontal, floating on the water, right? If they float long enough, they eventually become waterlogged. Well, when they become waterlogged enough, the root end that's a little bit more dense, it eventually sinks first until they sit there and just bob up and down in the water like this. Until eventually it becomes enough waterlogged till it just sinks down to the bottom. And when it hits the bottom, usually it falls over and then gets covered up with more sediments, right? What if when it hit the bottom, the sediments were falling around it fast enough where it got stuck in that vertical position before it could fall over? Well, then anything sticking above where water could get to it would rot within a few years, right? What if all these layers filled in before it could rot? Well, if it fills in before it could rot, then that whole tree trunk could become fossilized. That's possible. Guess what he found at the bottom of Spirit Lake? 15 feet of sediments already. Some of these tree trunks got stuck in a vertical position where literally it's 15 feet from the bottom to the top there. Is that what we see in the world? All over the world, folks, we find something called polystrate fossils. Poly means many. Strat means strata. Okay? Bunch of layers. What's this kid doing with his hand sitting on a tree trunk that's broken off, obviously? They used to go up through rock layers where every single inch represents thousands of years. This tree could not have sat there for thousands of years waiting to be fossilized while it was being exposed to water. It would have rotted. There's no possibility. What about this one? Did it turn around and grow up through solid rock looking for sunlight? No. It got buried, and all these sedimentary layers were laid down around it while everything was soft, and it started becoming fossilized. What about these? Even more. From one coal seam up through to another coal seams, and those two coal seams are supposed to be millions of years difference in age. Impossible, folks. Polystrate fossil means it all had to be laid down quickly before the tree could rot. There's another one broken off the side. This one little section right there. There's more. There's more from Spirit Lakes. Specimen Ridge. The floating log mat theory for coal formation seems to fit this data on Noah's flood about 4,400 years ago. Now there's a handout on the back table back there. I think this is it right here. The evolutionists claim that the distance between here to here is 3 feet, and therefore there's millions of years of deposits to be laid down. Therefore, this right here is millions of years younger than this. It's impossible. He would have rotted. The oldest language, oldest writings, they claim about 5,000 years ago. Chinese calendar puts about 4,600 years ago, okay, for a flood. Hebrew calendar, about 5,700 years ago, okay. There's more evidences, such as lava. There's not enough lava on the earth. There's too few minerals in the ocean. If the ocean's supposed to be 4.6 billion years old or 3.5 billion years old, we should have a whole lot more salt. Puts a limit on the age of the earth of 40 to 60 million years. Just not enough salt there, folks. Or other suns. There's too few people on the planet. We have 6.6 billion people alive on this planet today, right? How could you go from 8 people getting off an ark to 6.6 billion? If you took today's human growth rate, which runs about 1.5% to 2%, and you say, well, we've had a lot of people been killed out by plagues in the past, things of that nature, so let's cut that growth rate in half. And let's cut that growth rate in half again. So instead of 1.5% to 2% per year, let's bring it way down, say half of 1% growth per year. Take out your little calculators and take 1 raised to the 1.005 power. That's half of 1% growth per year. Raise that to 4,400, which is the number of years since the flood. And guess what you get? 6 billion people. No problem, folks. Try raising it to the 40,000th power if the earth is 40,000 years old.